everyone, my name is Gabby and today I'm going to be bringing you my review for the 6-time Tony Award winning musical Dear Evan Hansen. I got to see the show while I was in New York City for BookCon 4 days before the Tony Awards with the full original Broadway cast, and I couldn't be more blessed and honored and grateful that I got the chance to experience this wonderful show. I'm very excited to dive right in and discuss the musical with all of you, but before I do, just some general announcements. This review is going to be formatted similar to my Hamilton Chicago review, and if you do by any chance want to see that review, I will have it linked down below. Pretty much I'm going to be discussing my seats, the different merch that I got, and then discussing the show and all of the performers in order of their appearance on stage. The reason that I mention this is because I don't want anybody to get spoiled or anybody to hear something that they think may ruin their experience at all. So if you're somebody that's new to the musical, I would recommend watching my Dear Evan Hansen book tag. I created that about 2-3 months ago using all of the songs from the original Broadway cast recording and turning them into bookish questions. And before I get into the tag, I talk a little bit about the musical, give a little bit of a description as to what it's about, and then from there I go into each question. I sort of talk about how it fits into the certain bookish question that I made out of it. So I think it's a good way to introduce yourself to the musical if you're new to the show because of the Tonys, or if you're just listening to the original Broadway cast recording for the first time. Just sort of decide whether you think you want to watch this review at your own discretion. In my opinion, based on all the content that I'm going to be discussing, I would say that if you're a fan of the show, maybe you follow fan pages on your different social media accounts, you watch celebrity interviews with the cast of the show, and you're into the musical, you would say that you're a fan of it. I think that you'll be fine watching this and isn't going to ruin your experience at all, because I don't want anybody getting upset and saying that I spoiled them or that I ruined something for them. So I want to put that out there and just watch at your own discretion. And then finally, I will be leaving my vlog down below for my final day in New York City when I saw Dear Evan Hansen. So if you want to see through my own eyes, you can go and watch that vlog and then maybe come back and watch this review. I think that that would be a little bit better since I uploaded that vlog first. With getting all that out of the way, I want to dive right into discussing the musical. So first things first, very briefly, I want to talk about seating, because I know that a lot of people pay a lot of money to get tickets for a show like this that is really popular, and that if you're paying all this money, you want to have good seats. The great thing about the Music Box Theater is that since it's a relatively small theater, that most of the seats in the theater are relatively good seats. Being somebody who spent about 5-6 months stalking the Music Box Theater location tag on Instagram, I was able to see lots of different pictures from different people's seats, and I have to say that I did not see a single horrible seat. Of course, I cannot attest to that with my own experience, as I had front row left mezzanine seats for a Wednesday matinee, so I didn't have to worry about anyone in front of me or worrying that I'm sitting too far in the back. I was able to have pretty perfect seats, and they weren't that expensive either. Now the prices have gone way up because the show's starting to get more popular. So pretty much what I would say is that if you get tickets to see the show, get whatever you can possibly get, because you're going to have a wonderful experience regardless of where you're sitting. But if you do want to see the view of my seats, I will leave a picture somewhere here so you can get a good idea as to where I was sitting, maybe if you have similar seats or if you're looking at similar seats. So if you can get tickets because you're going to have a wonderful time regardless. So now diving into the merch, I have 4 different pieces of merch that I bought while I was at the show, 2 of which I am wearing. The first is the Dear Evan Hansen baseball tee and beanie. Both of them say Dear Evan Hansen, a new musical, and I wanted to get both of these because they're just really soft and really comfortable. I got the baseball tee just primarily because I love baseball tees. I've started to wear them a little bit more just because I like the length of them and I feel like they fit relatively well. And this shirt is also, like I said, really soft and really comfortable. And it's also really simple in design, so you can pretty much wear it with whatever, and it just has a nice comfortable feel to it. And then the same thing with the beanie. I love beanies because I have very long and very thick hair and I really can't do much with it. So I always like wearing hats or wearing beanies because it just gives me something to do with my hair, something to give it a little bit more style. So I liked this because it's not like I have to wear it with the Dear Evan Hansen t-shirt. I could wear like a black t-shirt with this or a white t-shirt or something else with it. And they both are just very nice and very simple and a great way to show off my love and my pride for this musical. So the other 2 pieces of merch that I got aren't actually wearable. The first is a 4-pack set of buttons from the musical. The first one has just the simple logo of the show on there. One says #Fansen, which is the fan base name of everyone who's in the Dear Evan Hansen community. And then there's 2 buttons that have names of songs from the musical on there. One is Sincerely Me, which is my favorite number in the entire show. I believe it's like the 4th one. And then this button has #You Will Be Found, which which is the show's tagline, but it's also the Act 1 closer. I love all these buttons because they're different sizes, but they complement the show really well. And being somebody who's been collecting buttons over the past year to add to my first in line tote bag from BookCon 2016, I really wanted to jump on these the minute that I found them on the Playbill website. And I'll be linking that website down below if you want to check out the merch, because maybe you'll be seeing the show soon, you want to figure out what you want to get, or maybe you just want to order something off of the Playbill store because you're not going to get to see the show anytime soon. I just think that the design of these buttons is really beautiful and really simplistic, and it's a really nice thing to add to a tote bag, and I definitely know that these are going to be going on my first in line tote bag very, 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 very soon. So then the final thing that I have here is the Dear Evan Hansen program. This pretty much contains a whole bunch of different pictures from the show and some interviews from the cast and the crew. I really wanted to get this because being somebody who loves to read, I like sitting down and really looking through this and getting to read through all the interviews and getting to hear what the cast and crew have to say about the show. So I really liked getting this, especially because the pictures in here are always so beautiful, and I just feel like it's something a little bit more than just getting a playbill. It just adds a little bit more to the show. This is just a really nice thing to have, so I'm excited to get to look through it soon and be able to read through all the interviews and be able to spend more time looking through it, because this is a really nice thing to get. So finally, I'm going to now dive in to discussing the show. I'm going to discuss each of the cast members in order of their appearance on stage. So of course, the first character is our title character, Evan Hansen, who is played by the phenomenal Tony Award-winning actor Ben Platt. So I feel like everything that needs to be said about Ben as an actor in the show has already been said. I mean, he has a Tony Award that communicates volumes, but I think it's really cool to be a part of all of that hype and excitement now, and being able to add a lot of my own thoughts and commentary. Seeing Ben up there accept that Tony Award was honestly one of the coolest experiences. You go and you see the show, and suddenly 4 days later, you get to see the lead, and he's up there and he's accepting a Tony Award, and his speech was so beautiful. He gets up there, he starts crying for like 10 seconds, composes himself, and then gives this beautiful speech. And I think that really attested to how wonderful he is as an actor. I was so worried that he was not going to get that Tony Award, but everyone said he was going to get it, and I was like, but what if he doesn't? But he did, and I'm so happy for him. I was so excited watching from home, and honestly, the chance that I even got to see him perform is an absolute miracle, because I believe later on that week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before the Tony Awards, he called out of all of his shows, which I feel bad about for everyone that was hoping to get to see him, but I think that was a smart decision on his part so we could rest up for the Tonys. But I could have missed the opportunity to see him if he decided to call out that entire week, which isn't something that he normally does because he's in most of the shows every week, which is a huge testament to him as an actor to be able to do a show like that that's really emotionally draining day after day after day. So I think that it was smart of him to call out of those shows, but honestly, it really makes me think of how lucky I am to be able to have gotten the chance to see him, because now he's just going to blow up having gotten that Tony Award, and he totally deserves it. So talking about his performance as Evan, a few things that I want to hit on. Number one, I love all of works that Ben adds to Evan's character. One specifically that I really resonated with is how fast Evan talks. You don't know how many times that I've been told you talk way too quickly, so it was really nice to get to see that reflected in Evan's character, because I've never seen it reflected before in a lot of characters in the media, just because it's a really unfortunate quirk to have, because when people talk quickly, you tend to not be able to understand them. But the great thing about Ben and his performance as Evan is in the opening monologue, that's primarily where you show off this quirk of Evan and his ability to just talk really quickly. But in that opening monologue, you're able to understand every single word that Ben says. He has perfect diction and perfect pronunciation. It's really impressive, because it'd be very easy to fumble up a word or fumble up a phrase, and he just hit every single word with such accuracy, and I was really amazed by it, because it's a difficult skill to have. And I just really like seeing that reflected in Evan's character, because it was nice to find a little piece of myself in Evan, because that's something that I so naturally do and is such a natural part of my persona. But I loved all the other quirks that Ben added to Evan's character. There's moments where he's constantly fidgeting around with something, or he's grabbing at his side, or he's biting his nails. He just has all these little quirks that make him feel more human and make him feel more genuine. I feel like we can all find a little bit of those quirks in ourselves, which is just a really wonderful thing. And I could go on and on and on and on and talk about every single musical number Ben is in and how he just nails every single one, but I want to focus on one specific moment that I really enjoyed from the show and his performance, and it's this moment before You Will Be Found, where Evan is going to give a speech and he's talking about Connor and the Connor Project and this whole new thing that he started. And so he has these stack of note cards and he's reading from them. You can tell he's a little bit nervous, and then he ends up reading the same one again. And so then he goes and fumbles around with one, and then he drops it, and then he drops all of them, and then he's just sitting on the stage, like on the floor, like curled up in a ball for like a solid minute, just like sitting there, terrified, shaking in total silence. And it was the most profound thing that I have ever seen, because it's this moment where the entire stage is empty except for a single spotlight on Ben, and there's no music, total silence, and the audience is just watching him for a solid minute, sitting there shaking before he gets up, tucks the note cards in his pocket, and starts You Will Be Found. It was just such a beautiful moment, because for Ben as an actor, he has to be able to hook the audience into his performance and have them captivated in what is going on with him and what is going on with this character, and they have to feel for him and they have to watch him and sit through this entire moment. And it was really agonizing, and I felt a lot of the stress that Evan felt as a character and a lot of the anxiety. And then you get into You'll Be Found, which is this big, wonderful Act 1 closer that is so beautiful, and it just shows this shift in Evan and his character, and it was just so wonderfully constructed. I think You Will Be Found was my favorite number to see performed, because there's so much going on with it. You have all of the different screens which have all the different social media posts on there, and it just feels like they're crawling through the web, and everything that's going on when Evan's speech about Connor just blows up on the internet. It's just the coolest thing to visually see. So to have something like that scene preceded and have an actor just be able to perform that scene with such accuracy was just a really phenomenal thing to see. And overall, I could not be more impressed with Ben's performance as Evan. Like I said, I could go on and on and on about him for hours, but everything that needs to be said about him as a performer has been said, and I think it's going to continue to be said. So then we move on to Rachel Bay Jones, who plays Heidi Hansen, and she is also a Tony Award winning actress, which I wasn't expecting at all, because looking at Dear Evan Hansen, it was nominated for 9 Tony Awards, and there had to be a category that they were going to lose, because it's very unlikely that they would win all 9 Tony Awards. So I was figuring this is a category that they could easily lose. But then seeing Rachel Bay Jones win that Tony, I could not have been more happy and ecstatic for her. Getting to see her performance is something that I really appreciated, because I think the great thing about her role as Heidi is that she sets up this great platform for both parents and teenagers alike to be able to get something out of her character. For the teenagers, we're able to see this motherly role, and we're able to sort of understand what it is that our parents go through and having to raise us, and the difficulties and struggles that they have and the fears that they have in having to raise a child. So we understand our parents a little bit more, and maybe it makes us more sympathetic to what our parents are going through and helps us to understand the struggles of parenthood, which we're going to have to maybe experience one day in our own lifetimes. And then as a parent, you're able to find parts of yourself that you can really resonate with in Heidi and her character, and you're able to get a better understanding of what it is that it's like to raise a teenager and what it is that the teenager is going through. And it's just a really wonderful thing that our character is able to do, and is able to bring both teenagers and parents alike together in her character and in her performance. And I really appreciated seeing that aspect of her character in the show. I think one specific moment for me that I was really impressed by in Rachel's performance is this dinner table scene where she is over at the Murphys. They offer all of Connor's money that he's saved up for college to Evan, because Evan has come and has repaired their family in a way, has given them their son back, and so they want to offer Evan this little gift of gratitude for everything that he's done. And of course, Heidi is surprised by this, because she wouldn't expect her son to get this money when she didn't know anything about Connor, and this was something that Evan hid from her. And so then you see this moment where she blows up at Evan and they start to fight, and there's this line that Evan says, I emotionally just like broke, and it was a moment where I started hysterically sobbing. Evan says, I know, I'm such a burden, I'm the worst thing that ever happened to you, I ruined your life. And then Heidi responds, you are the one good thing that has ever happened to me, Evan. And I just was hysterically sobbing watching that, because I felt that way. I've said that to my mother, and that's something that I just really resonated to, and I've never seen before depicted in any medium of media ever. And I really liked seeing it, because of the mother-son relationship between Evan and Heidi feels so similar to my relationship with my mother, and I loved getting to see that, because it just made me so appreciative of my own mother and helped me to sort of find a little bit more self-confidence and find a little bit more of myself. When I read that line in the libretto, I started crying, and then getting to see it on stage was beautiful, because the relationship Rachel and Ben have on stage is really phenomenal. And then you transition into Good For You, which is just this really powerful number, and then you have this reconciliation between the characters in So Big So Small. Heidi sort of comes to terms with what it is that she's gone through and having to raise Evan, and how she's had to go through a lot of struggles and a lot of difficulties. She knew that when her husband left her and she was having to raise Evan on her own, that she would make mistakes, that she'd made mistakes in the past, and that she'd continue to do it in the future. And it's her acknowledging that and sort of talking about the fact that her son is really important to her, even though it may not seem that way because of the difficulties in her schedule and the difficulties that she has parenting and the worries and fears that she has. And it just felt so genuine and so honest and so beautiful. And I think that that performance of So Big, So Small got her that Tony Award, because if you were not crying watching that, you are a soulless monster, because it was just so beautiful. And I loved getting to see her performance as a mother, and obviously her being a mother herself, she was able to probably really easily find that role and really beautifully depict it on stage, and I was just so honored to have gotten to see her. So next we have Cynthia Murphy, who is played by Jennifer Laura Thompson, and she is the other mother in this show. And I think the great thing about having two moms in the show is that as a parent, you can find a little bit of yourself in either Heidi or Cynthia, specifically if you're a mother, because they are two totally different characters, but they're also going through relatively similar circumstances. I think the interesting thing about Cynthia and her character is that she has all of this money and she's very wealthy compared to Heidi, who is having to be a nurse and work long hour shifts and really isn't able to be there for her son. But then you look at the fact that Connor is the one that committed suicide, and you think that it would be the exact opposite situation. And so you see that when Cynthia finds out about Connor and she has this suicide note and she finds out that he had a friend, and she comes to Evan and she wants to believe so badly that this is Connor's suicide note, that when Evan initially tells her that I wrote it, starts to say that Connor didn't write that, she pushes that aside and doesn't even bother to acknowledge that at all, which sort of starts this whole spiral lie. From there, Evan goes and creates all these emails, and it just gives Cynthia a lot of hope, because maybe she feels that she isn't responsible and that there isn't something that she could have done, that maybe it takes a lot of that grief and that fear off of her shoulders. And so you see that in Requiem, that she's the one who holds all these letters so close to her heart, that it means so much to her, because she gets this version of her son back that she never knew, and she feels that he had a friend and maybe he wasn't alone as he acted. And it's just really beautiful seeing how attached she is to those letters. And then it's just this really heartbreaking moment when she gets that reveal that these letters were fake, especially after she took Evan in and tried to right some wrongs and try to do with Evan what she couldn't do with Connor, and then finding out that Evan created this entire lie and that Connor had never written a suicide note and that all of her worst fears were confirmed, is just this heartbreaking moment. And seeing Jennifer Laura Thompson's reactions to everything were just beautiful. I think out of all of the performers, she had the best reactions to everything that was going on around her, in terms of like when she had to be sad and when she sort of had to maybe be there for Evan, and just everything. All of her facial reactions were wonderful, and I was really impressed by that, and also her voice and everything. I was so impressed with her performance, and I think that she played Cynthia Murphy really well, because she sort of plays a role in this way where you feel bad for her and what it is that she's going through, but you also acknowledge the fact that she's a flawed character and that there were mistakes that she made raising Connor and that she could have done better raising him. As she arcs throughout the show, you get to understand her and you get come to terms with what it is that she did, and I think that her character arc is really nice, and I think that Jennifer Laura Thompson played it fabulously, and I was so honored to see her on stage because she is just such a phenomenal performer. So then we move on to Mike Weiss, who plays Connor Murphy. I was really interested to see how Connor played into this show, because he is a little bit of an enigma, as you never really know Connor and you never truly get to understand him the way that you do other characters, because he's alive for such a short period of time, and then the rest of the musical he's just sort of creation that the other characters want to use to sort of motivate their own agendas. And so you have to have an actor that's able to take that and is able to portray Connor in the way that the audience will understand him, but also make him very flexible and very moldable to all of these different characters and what it is that they want out of Connor. So you have to have an actor that understands that and knows how to play that role, and Mike Feist did it perfectly, and you could see the differences between real life Connor and this Connor that everybody else had created, and it was such a stunning thing to see performed. So if you look at Connor before his suicide and then Connor after, you see that Connor in the beginning has really no emotion in any of his lines, and you can just kind of tell when you meet him alive that all hope is lost for him, and that if somebody were to find out about him and somebody would want to be more understanding of him, maybe try to help him, that he's too far gone and that really all hope is lost. You see how his parents don't understand him, how they judge him and put him into a box and just sort of label him and sort of push him aside. And so you see how he gets sort of angry at them, and I think that's where, if any, all of his emotion comes from. So it's this moment when he finds Evan and signs his cast that maybe he sees a little bit of himself in Evan, knowing what he's going to do. He goes and signs Evan Evan's cast and does it out of a way to sort of show him kindness and maybe help Evan feel like he's not alone. He sees Evan write this letter and mention his sister Zoe in it, and it's this moment where he gets really upset because somebody has this attachment to his sister that doesn't even know his sister at all, and it maybe makes him upset or maybe a little bit jealous that he can't have that relationship with his sister, that somebody feels that way about his sister in a way that he can't. And so you see him take all of his anger out on Evan, and then he goes and does what he does, and that's pretty much the end of the real life Connor that we see alive in this show. And so it's interesting because you can interpret that in lots of different ways, and you really can never fully understand Connor and the decisions that he made and why he did what he did while he was alive. I loved getting to see Sincerely Me because not only is it my favorite number in the show because it's such a jam, but it's this moment where you see Connor again for the first time, and he's being recreated to serve whatever purpose Evan wants, and sort of in a way Evan is projecting all of his fears and all of his concerns about maybe being lost or being forgotten or not fitting in or not being popular or not fitting into some standard onto Connor, and using Connor to maybe promote his own agenda. And you see Connor being molded in that way, and Mike Weiss does an amazing job performing that and creating all of those changes in his character. And you see that, you know, throughout the rest of the musical there are moments where Evan and Connor have their own conversations, and where Connor comes to life as sort of Evan's subconscious in a way, and sort of tries to push him to keep going with the Connor project, to keep trying to help and keep Connor's legacy alive so that he can keep his legacy alive, so that he can feel remembered and loved in a way that Connor was not able to be. So one specific line from Connor that I really loved, and a moment that I was really impressed by and really taken aback by, is this moment where Connor and Evan are talking, and Evan wants to come clean about the Connor project and about this entire lie that he's created, and wants to sort of just get everything off his chest. And then it's this moment where Connor sort of says that if you're going to tell the truth, you should tell the truth to yourself and really be honest about what happened when he fell from this tree and broke his arm. He hasn't been entirely honest about what happened there. And it's this moment where Connor says this line that's just really beautiful and really haunting, to the point where you just like get chills. And Connor says, "Did you fall or did you let go?" And he says that with a pause between the two. And I read that line in the libretto and I was immediately taken aback by it because it's just such a beautiful line. And so I knew when it was coming and I mouthed it as Mike Weiss was saying it, but it was interesting because he had the pause between the two sentences that really made you take everything in that he was saying, because it's this big reveal that Evan isn't so different from Connor in the choices that they made. It's just only that Connor succeeded while Evan failed. It's this moment where you get to understand Evan a little bit better as a character, and you understand what it is that he's going through and sort of see his motivation for continuing on with this lie. The way that Mike Weiss delivered that line was just phenomenal, and that was a moment for me where I was really impressed by his performance and where I was really sold, and I couldn't have been more honored to see him because he really is a dynamic performer, and I was so impressed by all of his numbers. Disappear was another really great number that I liked seeing from him. Overall, his entire performance was really unique and really interesting, and I liked getting to see it on stage. So then we have Michael Park, who plays Larry Murphy. The thing that's great about Larry is he is our only fatherly role in this show, and so with that, you sort of see that in the beginning of this musical, he takes on the stereotypical fatherly role where he doesn't seem to have that much of an involvement with Connor. He seems to sort of push Connor aside, and you can tell that they really didn't have that good father-son relationship that Larry may have wanted. And so then he finds out about Connor's suicide, and he's playing this strong, stereotypical manly role where he can't be upset. He has to be there and comfort his wife, and he can't really have any emotions. And you see that when he gets all these letters that he's hesitant to read them. But it's this moment during You Will Be Found, and it's literally blink and you will miss it, because I almost missed it. And it's this moment where we have Jennifer Lora Thompson and Michael Park on stage, and Michael Park just like has a little bit of like a breakdown where he comes and like gets down on one knee and just really starts sobbing, and then Jennifer Lora Thompson's character, Cynthia Murphy, is then there to comfort him. And it's this really beautiful thing that you see, because stereotypically the fathers are always supposed to be strong and manly, and they're the ones that are supposed to be there for their wife, and they're the ones that are supposed to suppress their emotions. So it was nice to see Larry have that breakdown and really feel something over the loss of his son. I think he's seeing the way that his son is impacting all of these people, and the way that he has made a change in something that maybe he never expected from his son. Maybe he's proud of Connor and the legacy that he's leaving, even though he acknowledges some of his responsibility for what happened. And then you see that in To Break in a Glove, which is the first song of the second act. He talks about something as simple as to breaking in a baseball glove, but pretty much how that song is a huge big metaphor for working hard and doing things the long way and just keeping consistent with something, and that the more that you persist, the more that you'll succeed, and acknowledging the fact that he needed to persist more with his son son and be there more for his son, acknowledging his own failures that he made in raising Connor, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. He acknowledges that, and it was nice to see Larry Murphy as a character be able to be open about that and his mistakes that he made and get to have a genuine emotional breakdown and then be able to have some learned experience from that. And I appreciated seeing that as a fatherly role, and I loved Michael Park's performance throughout this entire musical, and I was really impressed by it. I was really glad that I got to see him on stage because I think that he did a really great job playing Larry Murphy as a father and being able to sort of play a different fatherly role that you don't typically see. So then we have the last of the Murphys, Zoe Murphy, played by Laura Dreyfus. I was so impressed by Laura Dreyfus' performance of Requiem because that's really Zoe's big number, and the notes that she hits and just the sheer chills that I got listening to that song was just, it completely and entirely exceeded my expectations at all, and that number was just so beautiful because it's this moment where Zoe as a character never had the base relationship with Connor. Connor was in a way abusive to her, and they didn't have the best relationship, and they were never really close, and so suddenly she's getting all of these letters from Evan, and she doesn't want to believe that any of them are true, and so you have this really beautiful moment in Requiem, which is my favorite part of the entire song. It feels really honest in this moment where you start to have the crescendo, and it starts, because when the villains fall, the kingdoms never weep, no one lights a candle to remember, no one mourns at all when they lay them down to sleep, so don't tell me that I didn't have it right, don't tell me that it wasn't black and white, after all you put me through, don't say it wasn't true, that you were not the monster that I knew. And I think that it's a really genuine testament to how Zoe feels about Connor, and the fact that he was somebody that was so horrible to her, to now have version that's the exact opposite, and to find out all these things about Connor that she doesn't believe that's true. The last thing that she wants to do is read any of those letters or be able to believe that any of them are true. But then you see her start to end up in this relationship with Evan, and she wants to put aside Connor and everything that went on with her brother and just have a genuine relationship with somebody that she really cares about and didn't want to be friends with her just because she was the dead guy's sister. You get to the end of the musical and Evan comes clean with this lie, and you see her being the one that's most heartbroken over this lie, even though she was the one that in the beginning never really needed those letters or was the one that acknowledged them the least. So it's interesting to see that juxtaposition, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that she's finding this lie out from somebody who really meant a lot to her and somebody that she really cared about, and seeing the way that most fictionalized stories go could have been the person that she ended up together with forever, and finding something like this coming out of his mouth I think really hurt her. And I liked getting to see that juxtaposition from Zoe and her character. It really helps you to understand what it is that she's going through with Connor, and it's a really beautiful moment where if I could tell her where Zoe's finding out all of these things that her brother thought about her, and it's this moment where she sees Evan as someone who gave her her brother back and helped her to see her brother in less of a horrible light. And it's a great thing that at the end of the musical then, about a year after everything that's taken place, she acknowledges the fact that these letters stitched her family back together as they were fighting and they were broken and fallen apart, and these letters helped bring them back together, and now they have picnics at the apple orchard all the time. They were able to find peace again as a family, and acknowledges the importance of Evan's letters and how they did that, even though it all was one big lie, and seeing her being able to reconcile and maybe have a possible friendship with Evan. And of course things are never going to be the same way again, but I really appreciate the way that her character ties up all of these knots and just makes the story end on a rather high note, or as high a note as you could possibly end after everything that happened in this musical. So I liked the way that her character was able to do that, and I just love Zoe as a character because she's not somebody who's in your face too much. She's just a genuine, very sweet and honest girl, and I just loved getting to see Laura Dreyfus on stage. She was honestly the sweetest person. I got to meet her at the stage door. She was just as sweet on stage as she was off. So next we have Alana Beck, who is played by Crystalline Lloyd. So I'm going to preface this by saying sorry, not sorry, but I cannot stand Alana and her character. And it's nothing against Crystalline at all. It's just the fact that there's this moment in the show where Evan shows Alana Connor's supposed suicide note, and Alana wants to go and put it online, and Evan begs her not to, but she goes and does it anyway, and then it blows up in everyone's face, and everyone starts hating on the Murphys, and it's just this huge big backlash, and it's an absolute mess. And just like this moment where I was like, if somebody says no, they mean no, and I was sort of salty at Alana for that. I think that's the great thing about her character. We're able to look at her and we're able to sort of acknowledge the flaws that we have as teenagers, being so involved in social media and using that as a way to sort of create this version of ourselves that we think that everybody would like. And you see that in a way that Alana is very fake in a way when she's on social media. And so she tries to create the Connor project and gets so invested in all of this, not only because she'll get to be the face of it, it'll give her some acknowledgement, some way to be seen, but I think also in a way it's important to her because she wants to be seen, she wants to be found, and she feels so put in the back. And I think that's a great thing about her character is that she's able to expose so many awarenesses to social media and to the ways that we use the internet as teenagers. And I really like how Kristlyn was able to bring that to Alana and her character in the way that Alana was able to do that as a character. Even though I was slightly annoyed by her at times, I still appreciated her as a character and what she brought to the show. So then finally we have my favorite character in the entire show, the insanely cool Jared Klieman, played by the even more lovable Will Rowland. Oh my gosh, you don't know how excited I was to see Will Rowland on stage and get to see him play Jared Klieman, because Jared is my favorite character in the entire musical. I kind of have some conflicts with Jared and his character. Jared Klieman is an asshole, he's a jerk, and some of the things that come out of his mouth are just not respectable at all. Still, I love him regardless. I don't know what that says about me, but I just think that Jared is such a unique and interesting character, because the great thing about him is that throughout this entire musical, he's really the only one that truly knows the full extent of what it is that Evan is doing with the Connor project and knows the full extent of this entire lie. With that, then you have a lot to play on with his character, even though it is a relatively small role. And I love the way that Will Rowland portrayed Jared Klieman. I think that's the reason why I loved him so much, because I love Will as a person. Every single moment that Jared was on stage, I had the biggest smile on my face because I just loved every single thing that Will added to Jared and his character, because he is your comic relief character, but he also is so much more because he has all these insecurities and he uses this comedy aspect that he has, this humor that he brings to the show as a defense mechanism. And you start to see that crumble as the musical goes on and as you start to get into the second act. And really, there's a moment that I was surprised by, that it was like a jaw drop moment that I wasn't expecting at all, that sort of starts this. And it's this moment during Disappear where Evan and Jared and Alana are coming to Cynthia and Larry about the Connor project and this whole new thing that they're creating. When they're talking about explaining it, Evan says, "Imagine a major online presence." Alana responds by saying, "With links to educational materials." Then Jared says, "A massive fundraising drive," and then it's ... in the libretto, and then Evan finishes the sentence by saying, "To help people like Connor." So in that moment with the ... what you see is that Jared goes up to say his line, and then Evan goes and shoves him aside and finishes his line for him. Holy shit, I was shook because I wasn't expecting that at all, and it physically broke me. It was this moment where even though you're supposed to like Evan and you're supposed to want to be on his side the entire time, even though you know what he's doing is wrong, that was a moment where I was like, hell no, I'm going to fight him because of how much I love Jared, which I don't know, again, what that says about me. That moment physically hurt because it's this moment where you start to see Evan start to shift into this person that he wasn't before, because he's gaining all of this spotlight from the Connor project, starting to get something out of it. So he has all of this ambition to want to go and do this, you know, considering the way that Jared has treated him and the fact that Jared is just friends with him because of the fact that his parents will pay for his car insurance, sort of in a way would make Evan upset. So he goes and, you know, shoves Jared to the side. It's the beginning of this entire rift that starts to form between them. So then you have the Sincerely Me reprise, which is like the greatest thing that I have ever watched. And it's this moment where Jared is at the keyboard, he's writing out this email, and he's creating this own version of Connor, but within that email, he's sort of inserting himself into the story and pretty much just wants to be a part of this friendship that Connor and Evan supposedly had. And then Evan goes and sees that email and is like, absolutely not, Jared, you were never part of the friendship, that's not part of the story at all. And Jared starts to get upset because it's all fake anyway, so why does it matter? And you're starting to see these insecurities and these walls that Jared has start to break down a little bit in this moment where you realize that all that time while he's bragging about having all of these friends and being so cool and popular and like getting to second base with a girl, that he really doesn't have anybody at all, and that he really is a lot more alone than he would like people to believe that he is. So then the moment that really broke me, and this is the last moment that you get between Jared and Evan, which is during Good For You, which by the way, Will Rowland solo in Good For You was absolutely fantastic, and every single note that he sang was gorgeous. But besides the point, point. There's this scene that happens between Jared and Evan in Good For You, which is the last scene between these two characters that I just physically was very, very broken by and very sad by. It's this moment where Jared and Evan are having a conversation, and Evan then starts crawling back to Jared and needing him to create more emails to create this fake friendship between them, which is how it initially started. And then, you know, he shoves Jared to the side, doesn't need him anymore, and then starts crawling back when there starts to be flaws in this story. And of course, Jared's the only person that he can come to, but after blowing Jared off, obviously that's not gonna work out very well. So Evan says, we need more emails showing that he was getting worse. Jared scoffs and then Evan responds, this isn't funny. Jared responds by saying, oh, I think it's hilarious. I think everyone would probably think it's hilarious. Evan responds, what is that supposed to mean? Jared responds by saying, it means you should remember who your friends are. Evan responds, I thought the only reason you even talked to me is because of your car insurance. Jared responds by saying, so? Evan then says, so maybe the only reason you talk to me, Jared, is because you don't have any other friends. And then Jared says this line, which I started sobbing during because I was like, Jared, my baby, and it just like, it broke me because I love Jared so much as a character, and it just hurt the way that Will said this line, just almost in tears, like, oh God, it just broke me. But he says, I could tell everyone everything. And then Evan says, go ahead, do it. Tell everyone how you helped write emails pretending to be a kid who killed himself, as he is literally like pointing at Jared's chest and basically threatening him, to which Jared responds, and then reading the stage directions from this line, like a helpless, heartbroken little kid, fuck you, Evan, asshole. And then he goes and storms off. Oh my God, like I knew that it was coming because I read it in the libretto, and hearing Will's delivery of all of those lines was phenomenal, and it really showed the rift that had happened between Evan and Jared, but it also really exposed a lot of those vulnerabilities that Jared had as a character. And I love Will Rowland. He is seriously such a talented performer, and I love every single moment that Jared was on stage. I was smiling so big because of all the jokes that he makes. I was constantly just laughing and smiling whenever he was on stage because Will is just such a wonderful performer. So that about wraps it up for discussing the actual musical and all of the actors involved in the production. Everybody, of course, is phenomenal, and I couldn't have been more impressed by everyone in the original Broadway cast, and I'm so blessed, again, and honored and grateful that I got a chance to see them. And then I also got a chance to stage door. So stage dooring at Dear Evan Hansen is relatively hectic. It just gets very mobbed. It was a very different experience than when I stage doored during Hamilton in Chicago, but I'm really glad that I got to stage door and meet some of the original Broadway cast members. So on my playbill, I have signatures from Asa Summers, who is the alternate for Larry Murphy. Then I got to meet Michael Park, Laura Dreyfus, and Cynthia Murphy, so I got to meet all of the living Murphys, which was really cool. And I'm really glad that I got to meet all of them, even though it was a little bit rushed. Pretty much what happened is I went and I saw the matinee, I waited at the stage door, and nobody came out. So then I decided it's my last day in New York City, I'm here, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to come back for the night show and stage door. So I went and I did that, and then all of them came out, they signed playbills, and it was a relatively like quick thing. I just couldn't have been more grateful to have gotten to meet all of them. Meeting Michael Park, Jennifer Laura Thompson, Laura Dreyfus, Asa Summers, all of them are so unbelievably talented, and the fact that they go out and they do this even though they don't have to, and they're performing these shows 8 times a week, they still come out and stage door and talk to fans and sign playbills, means the world. And I couldn't have been more grateful to get the chance to meet them because they were just truly phenomenal, wonderful people. And it was really quick, and it was a little bit uncomfortable in terms of the fact that they were just going and signing playbills, and that it didn't feel like as a genuine experience as I had with Hamilton, where all of the actors really signed their playbills, took time to talk to everybody, take pictures, and it felt like a lot more genuine experience. But having a show like this that's so mobbed and as insane as it is, and now I can guarantee you that it's only gonna get worse with them having won 6 Tonys, I still am unbelievably grateful that I got to meet all of them, and it's going to be an experience that I will never, ever, ever forget. So looking back at this review, it's probably really, really incredibly long, and I apologize if it is, but if you want to comment down below a favorite moment from the show, if you've seen it, if you're seeing the show, if you're excited, what's something you're looking forward to, just let me know. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with a new video. Goodbye!